So this is my 2022 Toyota Supra. It is the 3.0, meaning it is powered by a BMW B58 powertrain, which a lot of people on the internet have left lots of funny comments on many videos about, but I think that's one of this car's greatest strengths. And although a lot of people who are Toyota purists don't like that about this car, I think that Toyota made a really smart decision by going with BMW and the B58 instead of one of their own in-house power plants. This motor is absolutely incredible. The character of the car is fantastic and it drives beautifully. That said, let's get a good look at the engine. It's BMW, so we pop that boy twice, and there it is, the glorious B58. Now, I have some implicit bias because I've owned several BMWs before ending up with this car, so I have familiarity with these power plants. One of my favorite cars I previously owned was a BMW 335i, which had the N55 in it, not the B58. An incredibly reliable power plant that if you want to tune, it can take a lot of power with very few qualms, and it'll do it reliably. That's really the biggest thing. It is a power plant where I've barely had to do anything to this car aside from just changing the oil in my time owning it. Not that I've had it for a super long time, but that's our trunk space, which honestly, some people say that this is a very dailyable sports car. And although I think that there is some truth to that, I will be honest and say that I think that if you're going to be looking for a daily and a one-car solution, the Supra should not be that vehicle. Squeezing into it is a little bit difficult, especially if you're a bigger guy like me, height or width. But yeah, now there are lots of things that the Supra does absolutely wonderfully as a daily driver, and one of them is Apple CarPlay works extremely well. I've never had any issues with Apple CarPlay whatsoever. It has always been an extremely quick thing to load. In some cars that I've driven and owned in the past that have had Apple CarPlay, it has been a mixed bag in terms of the connection. In this car, it's always been reliable for me. I've never had issues, but your mileage may vary, of course. It does also have Android Auto. Mine has the automatic. Now, I know some people might see the auto and be like, oh, how dare you get the automatic transmission? Well, it's my car, not yours. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is I think the ZF 8-speed is a transmission that, frankly, is as good as it gets without getting an actual dual clutch transmission in terms of autos. These things are known to handle a lot of power. I'm not going to be modifying mine, at least I have no plans to right now, so that doesn't really matter to me. But the other thing that this gets really right is the shifts are very fast when you're in sport mode, and they have some character to them. It is also a genuinely competent sports car, and we will see that to the extent we can given the current weather. Now, I want to talk a bit about actually owning this car before anything else while we're getting out of this parking lot. One of the biggest things that I noticed pretty much immediately when I first drove this car was it has an incredibly responsive steering rack. Now, keyword is responsive. The steering in the Supra is not something that I would say is it is not, it doesn't give you a lot of feedback. And it is somewhat vague. Now, I've driven the M2, the Z4 that this car is compared to. The steering rack in this car is better. I don't have any doubt in saying that whatsoever. It is just straight up a better steering rack in this car. Now, I believe it does share the actual steering rack as well with the Z4, but in this car, it is tuned by Toyota GR Racing, and frankly, it makes a pretty big difference. After having driven both cars back to back, the Supra definitely feels much more sports car than the Z4 does, and that is by no means meant to be a slight against the Z4, but for being a car as small and light as the Z4 is as a convertible, it is much closer to a GT car than a Miata, whereas I've owned a Miata, and I would honestly say that the Supra is one of the closest cars I've driven to a Miata that is in its class. This car weighs 3,000 pounds. It does not handle like it weighs 3,000 pounds. You don't really feel that weight much more than you would in a car that's 2,500 pounds. It does make a difference with things like autocross. However, on the street, this is a light, fun, tossable car, and I've never had issues with the way it handles or how it feels. It always feels good to drive, and it cruises so nicely. Right now, we are in standard mode. We're not in sport mode. And in standard mode, the shifts are clean and smooth, and you don't have to think about them. And because this is an 8-speed transmission, you know, we're cruising at just under what would be the equivalent of 60 miles an hour, and we're at 1,500 RPM. This thing gets, I believe, close to 30 miles per gallon on the highway, which is wonderful. And there's also a guy that's just absolutely on my ass. No, anyway. But yes, that having been said, the actual transmission itself is not only something that I don't have any complaints about, it's one of the things that I think is a strength of this car. As much as some people really want these to have manuals, I really like the ZF 8-speed. It's just a really nice transmission for an auto. It gets the job done, and for me, I do take this car to autocross, I do take this car to events, and I have fun with it, and I like that I don't have to think about the shifter. And I know some people might think that that's sacrilegious as a car guy, but the reason I'm putting so much emphasis on the transmission is I like this transmission, and every time that you mention on the internet that you have a GR Supra, somebody always comes up to you and will be like, oh, why didn't you get a Mark IV Supra? It's the same price. Or why didn't you get a one with a manual transmission for a little bit more? And it's because I wanted the automatic, and I've driven a Mark IV Supra, and it is not like this car at all. The Mark IVs are legendary, and they are icons for very good reasons. However, one of those reasons is not their handling. The Mark IV Supra does not handle well. You can build it into a fairly decent car, but the reality is that the Mark IV Supra is a heavy vehicle that is from the 90s and was designed as a GT car. This is a sports car, and it's actually a pretty big change from the last generation in that regard. It really feels like a sports car, and yes, you can use it like a GT car. It has a decent amount of trunk space back there, but when I say decent, I do mean it has just a decent amount of trunk space. It doesn't have any more than that. And if you wanted to do this, if you want to use this car for anything other than just some basic stuff, frankly, you're not gonna really be having a good time with it. And before we get into sport mode here and talk about the actual driving dynamics overall, I want to say two things. One of my least favorite features about modern vehicles is the auto start-stop. I know it's for fuel economy and for stop-and-go traffic, and for that I think it's fine, but I wish that it would default to off, or there was a setting for it. I don't think that there is. If I'm wrong, someone in the comments correct me, but having this default to on is one of my biggest frustrations with this car, because, I mean, yeah, I can just press the button, it's not a super big deal, but I almost always forget that it's a thing until it turns the engine off. Thankfully, it doesn't activate in sport mode, so it's not a super big deal, but, you know, we'll take what we can with it. My car in particular has an issue that is very common on these Supras. I believe they fixed it in the 2023 model year onwards, but there is a chassis height sensor in the back of the car that will activate sometimes for seemingly no reason. And what I mean by that is it will sometimes get an incorrect reading because it will be knocked down or knocked out of place, and it will present an error code on the dashboard and on the display. And again, it's not a super big deal, it's not the end of the world, but it's really annoying because, you know, you hear the BMW chime and then you panic because you ask yourself if this is the day that your car is going to die on you. So we're gonna put this into sport mode now. Now in sport mode, in automatic mode, the car's shift points are different. I have to be a bit careful because this is a rear-wheel drive car, and we are out on a rainy day today in some just okay all-season tires. But one thing I absolutely cannot get enough of with this car is the sound. Now, the B58 has an interesting sound for an inline-six to me, and the reason is because of the fact that I find that inline-six sound from this motor specifically feels very futuristic. I don't know how else to word it. Tell me if you guys know what I mean by that. It's like when you're driving this car, you're entering a different dimension. And that's going to sound very nerdy and lame and boring, but It's just got a very specific sound to it. Now, if this was a day that did not have a shit ton of rain on the road, I would absolutely love to be pushing this more to its limit to really demonstrate the incredible handling characteristics of this car, but I'm not on the right tires for that. And frankly, I don't want to die. And it's quick, too. That's one of the things about this car that I cannot state enough to you guys. It is a fast car. We're used to an era where electric cars are so fast and so accessible. You can buy a Tesla Model 3 Performance for around the same price of this car. It'll run a 10 in the quarter mile. A 10.9, and only if you have the American variant, but it's still a 10. And that's fast. That is no doubt very fast. It has high end. This car does not excel in 0 to 60 like some others. I believe that its quoted 0 to 60 time is 3.3 or 3.7 seconds, depending on the year and trim. I believe this year, with this engine trim, is 3.3, but I think that if you are just focusing on the 0 to 60 time for any car, you're missing the picture. The thing with the Supra is that it has a lot of pickup in the high end. Surprisingly so. This thing is fast, and it's great for track driving because of that, and for highway driving, and it has plenty of power for overtakes and anything you really want to do. And that is something that's surprising about it, because I was interested in this car because of its size. It is only a couple of inches longer than a Miata. And yes, it is heavier, but it has a lot more power. So you get this car with a very short wheelbase, and yeah, sure, not a ton of storage. It's two-seater, whatever. That's why you like it. This car is a great sports car. And if you go into it with that expectation, it's really hard to make an argument for almost anything else on the market at this price point. If I were in the market for a car right now, well, I would have a Supra, but if I were to pick something else, I would probably be going for a Miata or a BRZ, or like an FRS or something, because those are the cars that you want for this specific use case. They are good enough for basic daily activities. You can get groceries in this car. You can take a friend somewhere in this car. You're not going to be doing a massive haul. You're not going to be moving, and that's okay. This car doesn't need to do those things. But what this car is good at, it's really good at. And that is the thing that I think really makes the Supra such a standout car. And now, because this car is, in the grand scheme of cars these days, relatively light, the stopping power with the performance brakes on this car is very impressive. This thing can stop on a dime with no issues whatsoever. It's totally responsive in that regard, you know, so it's got great steering, great handling characteristics, very minimal body roll. My car's on stock suspension, and you can't, like, feel any of it at all. And it just goes, man. And I know that we car people love to say that phrase, but I really do mean it with the Supra. This car loves to go. It is such a peppy, fun little car that is super reliable and all around just a wonderful vehicle to own. Although I don't pick this car as often as I pick my Plaid or my R8, I do love driving my Supra, and I take it out probably 2 or 3 times a week and just go out for a spin. I'm almost never taking it anywhere. I love it to bits. It is one of my favorite vehicles, period. And all of this has just been the driving and ownership experience. That doesn't even talk about other things. One thing that I think this car gets absolutely right is its styling. When it first came out, I wasn't sure about it because, well, you know, the Mark IV was iconic. I loved the Mark IV Supra. I played it in Need for Speed Underground 2 when I was a kid, and so it has like this kind of legendary spot in my brain, you know, Fast and Furious, everything. So there's so much kind of legend behind that vehicle, and you don't want to have like a bad make your heroes moment with a car, and thankfully this car does not have that phenomenon. It is an absolutely wonderful car to drive and to look at. Every time that I get out of this car, I find myself looking back at it because it just looks absolutely gorgeous, man. I love how the Mark V looks, and I don't care if anyone says otherwise. I think it's a beautiful car. And that also doesn't even mention the fact that this car's held its value really well. Now, I don't think you should ever buy a car for its value. I don't think you should buy a car with the expectation that you will make money on it. I think that's a stupid reason to buy a vehicle. You should buy something that you like and that suits your lifestyle. And if you're not a car person, then, you know, that might be a minivan, that might be an SUV, and that's totally fine. But if you're a car person, you want something that brings you smiles. And this Supra brings me lots of smiles. But yeah, I know this isn't a super structured video. Some of you guys might like those really heavily structured reviews more, but I figured I would give this a shot. I'm going to try out doing this with a couple other cars, and I should also have some cars from a dealership that I'll be able to show you guys soon, so I guess stay tuned for that. I'm going to actually try to upload some stuff to this channel. I've been meaning to for a long time. It's just been, you know, so busy with everything else in my life, but hopefully I will have time to actually give this channel the love that I think it deserves, and ultimately we'll see what happens. And if you live in the lower mainland of BC, British Columbia, or you live in Washington State, and you have a car that you would like to see me do a POV of, feel free to leave a comment or send me a DM on Twitter or send me an email. I would be more than happy to check out cars. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be an old 90s shitbox, or it could be something new and unusual. Either way, I'm Ivy Combe, and I hope that you liked this car as much as I do.